And so this is purely political. This is complete manipulation. The so-called protests from the United States are so half-hearted, and the same ones from Gordon Brown or anyone else, there's nobody to blame for it. Everyone got exactly what they wanted. Gaddafi got a hero's welcome for his person. The son was accompanying him. The British got oil deals probably for this situation. The United States government...
Excuse me, the deal allegation has been vehemently denied by Downing Street. Let me cross over to Dr. John Armstrong, who's standing by in Fudan University. Hello. Hello, John.
Good to talk to you.
Hi. Do you think this is a political decision to release Mr. McGrachy?
Obviously, there have been a lot of political maneuvering in the background, but if this was purely a political decision, then it would have been made some time ago. You have to bear in mind that the Scottish Parliament, the Scottish government is independent of, is able to act autonomously from the British government. So in 2007, when they signed a prisoner exchange deal, they could have been trying to maneuver for a deal then, but obviously the Scottish Parliament, which is independent and doesn't have to follow either Tony Blair or Gordon Brown, was not willing to bow to any pressure at that particular time. I think that the release is because it's based on compassionate grounds. Obviously, it's convenient, but it's
excuse me, but do you believe this is done on a compassionate ground?
Mm-hmm.
Do you believe it is out of a compassion?
Well, I think it's convenient that it's done out of
Mr. Tony Blair, the former British Prime Minister, said oil deals were indeed put on the table during their secret negotiations. Do you accept this as true?
Well, obviously, I think from the Scottish government's point of view, they don't want to be interfered with by anybody else, and they don't want to have the rule of law to be undermined by political pressuring. So I believe, obviously, that for the Justice Minister McGaskill, this would have been a very uncomfortable decision. But obviously, there has been manoeuvring going on in the background. Has this led to direct input into any decision? Well, we can speculate, but we can also only go on what the evidence that the Justice Minister had himself as well, which is that the prisoner in question is going to die and therefore must be and therefore the option to release him on compassionate grounds is there. This is not an option that they have to follow in all cases. There have been appeals before, and not all of them have been granted.
Well,
so
thank you very much,
it's
John. Thanks a lot.
Discretion, he has taken liberties.
Thank you, Dr. John Armstrong, for being with us. In fact, 23 of the 30 applications for release on compassionate grounds have been made possible since 2000 and have been granted eventually. But Dr. Victor Gao-Zhikai, the other interesting question concerning the early release of Mr. McGrachy is whether he is innocent. He had been able to maintain his innocence until the last moment when he was told he's going to be released.
For the record, whether someone maintains his innocence is immaterial if he is being convicted through a due process by a court of a right jurisdiction. So I think for this particular Mr. McGrachy, he went through the process. Everything was satisfied, and he was convicted of murder and sentenced to life. So I think the presumption of innocence already no longer applies to him, and his insistence of innocence is also immaterial unless he can win an appeal or unless he can produce information or evidence to overthrow his conviction.
But see, here's the problem, and the problem is that coincidentally, today was the date, August 27th, that the appeal was to be heard. He was let go a week ahead of the appeal. There is some cover-up going on here about not letting the facts come out of the case. And like I said, why is it conveniently done that he's going to die 3 months later? Time will tell. He will survive beyond 3 months. I'm pretty confident of that. No one has questioned the medical records, and I can tell you, as a person who's dealt with cancer, you term it in stages 1 through 4, and they have not said what stage it is at all on anything, whether it's passed on.
Yeah, Yang Rui, you've asked whether this is a decision based on compassion or not. In my view, it is a decision based on technical reasons or a technical excuse of compassion, but in substance is much more political. And my concern is that if this decision, if we look at the consequence of this decision, it may be considered in historical terms as an appeasement to terror or appeasement of consequences of terror. This will have dire consequences for world peace and stability. I think the world will be more and more held hostage by terrorist activities, because if this is the outcome of a conviction of a convicted criminal for the death of 270 people and many, many ruined families, I think this will have dire consequences going forward.
But here's the problem, is that you're saying he is convicted of killing 270 people. That is correct.
Out of these people, 189 were Americans.
That's correct.
Is that the major reason why the Americans were so angry?
Yeah, well, you know, it was the biggest criminal investigation in the history of the UK, handled by the smallest constabulary in all of the UK and the FBI. So that the United States did participate in it, certainly. But what I'm saying is, the key witness was paid $2 million for his testimony. I don't know how that happened. So if you look at the facts of the case, and they will come out over time, you'll see that he most probably was wrongfully convicted. And it's not me saying that. It's the United Nations observer who was sent there, Mr. Kochler. It is also the Scottish government itself, and the review board itself said that there may have been a miscarriage of justice. Now, the United Nations observer said there was an outrageous miscarriage of justice. This was held in a former United States military camp in Netherlands under Scottish law. And again, the evidence that was allowed in and the amount of tampering that went on allegedly is something to have taken a look at. They were going to start discussing that today, and now he's released. So
now,
I don't think it's
let's look at a broader question as to what's going to happen between Washington and Tripoli. Now, while President Obama has been seeking rapprochement with the Muslims around the world, particularly with Gulf states, those in the Middle East, and when Libya was removed from the list of sponsors of terrorism in the year 2003, do you think the American politicians will really get so angry despite the protests that are coming from the DC?
No, I think these are separate things. I think, from the Libyan government, back in 2003, they sent a letter to the United Nations. They admitted their responsibility for the Lockerbie bombing, and as part of the deal, they compensated, the families of the deceased persons in the amount of $2.7 billion. US dollars. So this is historical, this is for the record, and I think we should give credit to Libya government for this particular decision. And however, this time, we should not blame the Libyan government, we should blame the Scottish government or whoever the decision makers there are in Britain, because if there is a miscarriage of justice, go through the appeal process, overturn the conviction, and let justice be upheld. But without going through the appeal process, without determining there is a miscarriage of justice, just release him on the technical reason of compassion and to the disregard of the concerns of all the peace-loving people who hate terrorism, this is injustice itself. So I think we should not mix these two things together.
Okay, thank you very much. A friend from Germany told me a couple of days ago that, in fact, the top terrorist of the Red Brigade, a notorious terrorist organization in Germany, was also given an early release on a compassionate ground. And he said that humanitarian and compassionate grounds are often cited by the European legal system and organizations to show their sympathy. Well, the other brutal fact is that in Libya there has been a proven record of 42 billion barrels of oil reserves, one of the largest in Africa. With that, we come to the end of this edition of Dialogue. The first